Hello. I thought I'd do a quick video since it's our time to decant our kombucha that we make. So I thought I'd do a video all about kombucha, which has a strange name, but it's a fermented sweet tea, and it's very yummy, and you can flavor it different ways, but there's some basic instructions and things that you need. So I'm going to sort of do this video in reverse order. Our kombucha that we brew every week is ready to be decanted for our second ferment. And so I'm going to show you how we do all that part, and then I'll show you how we make the new batch. So we're going to start with the old batch and then go to the new batch. Um, so I have, hold on a second, move this so that you can make sure you see it clearly. Um, this is, we brew in gallon jars. We make 2 gallons at a time. And so we have it covered in cheesecloth with a rubber band that keeps any dust and fruit flies, they love things that ferment, out of it, but allows it to breathe and air to come in. And we brew it in our basement in a closet, so it's dark and cool. You can really brew it anywhere. I generally say to keep it more in the dark. I don't know if that really matters that much, but you don't want it too warm. It'll just brew really fast, and then it will tend to get overdone, which some people like it when it's like fermented longer, so that could be something you want. I know some people don't want any of the sugar left in it, so they let it brew for several weeks, and it's very acidic, like a vinegar. Um, I'm not as happy with it when it's super vinegary, so I like it a little sweeter. So we tend to do a week in the summer, usually a little bit longer in the winter when it takes longer for it to brew. But anyway, I'm going to take the cheesecloth and the rubber band off, and I have my bottles that I pour it into, which are flip top bottles. We got them a long time ago at a brewing store. Um, and I put my cheesecloth into my funnel and I secure it with the rubber band. So this is so that when I pour it, it strains any stuff out of it into, so I don't have a lot of the uh, sediment in there. So I just do that, and then I just rinse it out at the end and put it back over the new kombucha. But if you see there's like a layer of brownish, gross looking stuff, that is the SCOBY. That's the mother. Like if you would have vinegar, you have a mother for vinegar. This is just, what actually ferments it. It's called a SCOBY because it's a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. So it's a matrix of all kinds of different bacteria and yeast, and that's what eats the sugar in the tea and turns it into lactic acid and ferments the sweet tea and creates your probiotic beverage, which is what kombucha is. It's got lots of different probiotics in it, so it's really good for your gut health. It's also got electrolytes, so it's really good in place of another type of electrolyte beverage when you're outside or when you're doing exercise or anything like that, and you need to make sure you replace your electrolytes. It's really good for that. It also aids in digestion because it's got acetic acid in it, so it helps with your digestion as well as the probiotics and enzymes and things that are great for your gut flora. So so basically, once you have it brewed, you what we call decant it into our jars. We use these jars. You can really do it into any. We like these because they seal it and that helps it get fizzy. So it's got a little bit of like natural carbonation to it as it does its second ferment. Um, so and the second ferment is really just to get it more fizzy and to give it a different flavor. You can do different flavors, but you can also flavor it in the first ferment by using different teas. So I was just going to talk about what teas we use. Generally, you want to use some kind of black tea and or green tea. We use Ceylon black tea. I just have loose leaf tea, so we just use like a basically a tea bag's worth of this, and then we use also decaf green tea. This happens to be a lemon myrtle flavor that we got, but sometimes it's just plain green tea. I also sometimes just do the black tea or the green tea with like one of a flavored tea, so like a hibiscus tea if I want a flavored one. There's all kinds of different varieties you can play with, but you usually want to make sure at least um, you're giving it some black tea every so often. Like if you're gonna do a batch that's not black tea, I would maybe every few batches, make sure you do a black tea just because black tea is the traditional tea that you use that helps keep your SCOBY healthy. Um, and I'm sensitive to caffeine, so a lot of times I use decaf tea, but sometimes I'll use a little bit of the caffeinated and then some of the decaf because I think I've heard that it's better for your SCOBY to use the caffeinated tea, but I don't think I haven't really had too many issues. Okay, so I'm gonna have my husband, because this is heavy, pour this into the jars, and then I'll explain to you how we do the second ferment. You can see the one that he filled is pretty fizzy already. It gets some carbonation as it ferments. Leave a little bit of tea in the bottom of your jar with your SCOBY to start your next batch because you need some of the tea as a starter along with the. And every time you brew, your SCOBY will form a new layer. So after it gets quite big, which ours is kind of getting there, we either peel off or cut a piece, and then you can share it with other people. Um, but if you have a bigger SCOBY, it's going to brew faster, and so it may go too far before you're ready. So we usually, if it gets too thick, we tend to separate it. And whatever size container you have, the SCOBY will generally form to the width of it. So the circumference of your jar will determine how big your SCOBY is. So he's going to peel a little bit of it off and put it in this jar with some tea. And then we'll just fill up the jar with SCOBYs and tea as we go. And it's like what we call a SCOBY hotel. Okay. So for a gallon, you probably want at least half a cup to a cup of kombucha left in the bottom with the SCOBY. Now here's our other jar. And if you notice, the color is like a light yellowish color. When you first brew it, it'll be much darker. You'll see at the end, and it lightens as it ferments. Okay, so now that you have them decanted into your flip top bottles, you can flavor them. So today we're using some ginger, and we just chunk a little bit up. And lemon, which we just took a little slice and cut it into 6 little wedges, and some raspberries, organic raspberries. So I have to tear those in order to fit them in. So you can do any combination of flavors you want. You could put a whole bunch of raspberries in there if you wanted. We just usually do like 1 or 2. And maybe a little piece of ginger. The raspberry ginger is really good. And then I just seal these, and we put them in the fridge to do our second ferment because it ferments slower and less likely to explode since these are sealed tight. If you leave them out on your counter, you need to burp them so that you don't end up with them like literally exploding all over. So if we put them in the fridge, that doesn't tend to happen. So that's what we do. All right, here's a couple lemon ginger, and I'll do some or raspberry ginger. I mean, I'm gonna do when I put the lemon in, I kind of squeeze it so the juice goes in there a little bit, and then a piece of ginger. This ginger's kind of not very. All right. Whoa, that one sprayed a bit. All right, and some ginger in there. And don't worry about if they're little tiny pieces or they break up, because when we decant ours, we have a little strainer that we pour it into our cup with a little strainer so that we don't end up with little pieces of fruit and stuff in it or ginger. So that's why we're not worried about the peel. If you think you don't want to strain it, you can always peel your ginger. All right, there we go. That's lemon ginger again. Okay, so now we'll just do some lemon raspberry, I guess. I try not to get the seeds, but sometimes I can't help it. Sometimes they're hard to shut. Okay. Now you can just not flavor it if you're doing a hibiscus tea with your other tea or something and you don't want to do a second ferment, that's perfectly fine. We just find it gives it a nice flavor, and it also the sugars from the fruit will make it even fizzier. Okay, so we got one more lemon. We'll do lemon raspberry again. Take the seed out. Okay. All right, so we got those ones. So now these, I'm just going to do some raspberry. I'll just put just raspberry in here. I'll just put the raspberries in this one. Okay, why isn't it? I don't know why this one's being fussy. There we go. Okay, now for these, I made this summer with my rhubarb. I did rhubarb vanilla bean syrup. It was basically I pureed some rhubarb with water, strained it into a juice, cooked it with some sugar and vanilla bean caviar, and boiled it down until it was syrupy. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this. As it second ferments, it'll eat up the sugar and leave the flavor, and it's really yummy. I actually made a vanilla bean rhubarb jelly is how it started, and then I thought, oh, the flavor's so good, that would be good as a syrup for kombucha. So I made some syrup. Just add a little bit. You don't need too much. All right, so we've decanted all of our kombucha and have all our bottles flavored for our second ferment. So what we're left with is your jar with some kombucha in the bottom and your SCOBY. For a gallon, you have about a cup or so of the kombucha left in there for starter. So now you have your tea that you brewed, which for each gallon, you want 1 quart of tea with the cup of sugar. So I did 2 quarts with 2 cups of sugar because we're doing 2 gallons. I'm just going to fish out my tea bags. I did 2 bags of black tea and 2 bags of green tea for this particular. Here, I'm going to put them in here. Just set that aside. Okay, now, since I did 2 quarts in one pot, I'm going to measure out into this measuring cup. So I just want 4 cups. Now this is steeped and it's still a tiny bit warm, but not too much over room temperature. But because it's still a little bit warm, I don't want to pour it directly into my SCOBY because I don't want to ruin my SCOBY. So I'm going to pour some cold water in here first. So I've got half a gallon here. And now I'm going to pour my tea in, my sweetened tea. And I use filtered non-chlorinated water. We're on city water and it has chlorine added, so I always filter it to get rid of the chlorine. So, and then I'm just going to top it off with the rest of the water. So you notice the color. Hopefully you can see this. I'm going to put the cheesecloth on here with a rubber band. That's basically all there is to it. I'm just going to fill my other jar and put it in my basement for, a couple weeks. And you see how dark it was and how light it was when it was finished. So as it eats the sugar, it lightens up the tea quite significantly. I'm just going to add this. And I'll have to get a little bit more water here. Just need a little bit more. And we're good to go. So that's all there is to it. So that's how you do kombucha. If you have any questions, put it under this post or email me or email HTN. It's super easy and it's very yummy. And I hope you enjoy brewing kombucha. Bye.